On my 17th birthday, they didn't give me a gift, just a ticket to leave home. No hugs, no wishes, no goodbyes. I stuffed my things into trash bags, watched the door close behind me, and realized I was never loved, just the spare part in my own family. My name is Eli Carter, and I turned 17 last week. I grew up in a small industrial town in northern Ohio, where the air always smelled faintly of rust and the sky was often gray, as if it carried the weight of the factories that defined our lives. From a moment I could understand the world around me, I knew I wasn't the cherished child in my family. That role belonged to my older brother, Jake, the golden son, the one who could do no wrong. I learned early to shrink myself, to tiptoe through life, to be perfect in hopes of earning a sliver of love. But no matter how hard I tried, I was never the priority. Every ounce of attention, every shred of affection, every dream my parents held was poured into Jake, leaving me with nothing but echoes. On the morning of my 17th birthday, I woke with a fragile spark of hope. Maybe today will be different. Maybe they'd remember. I pictured a small gesture, a card, a smile, even a simple happy birthday, Eli. I walked downstairs, my heart pounding with anticipation, only to find the kitchen cold and quiet. No cake, no candles, no acknowledgement. My parents sat at the table, sipping coffee, their faces blank as if I were invisible. Disappointment stung, but I swallowed it down. I was used to this. I'd learned to expect nothing. Then came the surprise. Eli, my mother said, her voice flat, "You need to pack your things. Jake and his girlfriend are moving back home." I blinked, confused. "What do you mean? Where am I supposed to go?" My father didn't look up from his newspaper. "We've talked to your Aunt Cindy in Cincinnati. You'll stay with her, just for a while." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. I stood frozen, my mind scrambling to make sense of it. They didn't need my room for me anymore. Jake was starting a family, and I was being discarded like an old piece of furniture. My room, my sanctuary, the one place I could hide from their indifference, was being repurposed for someone else's future. I wasn't just invisible, I was expendable. No one cried, no one hugged me, no one even looked at me as they delivered the news. It was a command issued on the day I turned 17, as if my birthday was nothing more than a convenient deadline to erase me from their lives. Less than 2 hours later, I sat in the back of my father's rusty pickup truck, 2 black trash bags stuffed with my clothes and a few belongings beside me. The bags crinkled with every bump in the road, a constant reminder of how little I mattered. The drive to Cincinnati was over 3.5 hours, and my parents filled the time with excited chatter about Jake's baby, the nursery they'd paint, the crib they'd buy. They debated whether to keep my old bed or toss it out, as if it had never been mine. Not once did they ask how I felt. Not once did they glance back at me. I stared out the window, watching the blurred landscape of Ohio pass by. Fields of dying corn, sagging barns, and faded billboards promising better days. My chest ached, but I didn't cry. If I opened my mouth, I knew I'd unravel, and I refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. So I stayed silent, clutching the frayed strap of my backpack, my only anchor in a world that felt like it was crumbling beneath me. When we pulled up to Aunt Cindy's modest house in Cincinnati, my parents didn't get out of the truck. My father popped the tailgate, and my mother rolled down her window just enough to say, "Your aunt's expecting you. Be good. Don't cause trouble." And then they drove away. The truck's tires screeched against the pavement, and I stood there, alone on the sidewalk, the trash bags at my feet. They hadn't even waited for me to pick them up. I watched the truck disappear around the corner, a dull ache spreading through me. It wasn't just that they'd left me. It was how easy it had been for them to do it. Aunt Cindy stepped out onto the porch, her face a mix of confusion and concern. "Eli, what's going on? Where are your parents?" I couldn't meet her eyes. My throat tightened as I mumbled. They said, "I'm staying here for a while." Cindy's gaze darted to the trash bags, then back to me. In an instant, she understood. Without a word, she crossed the lawn and pulled me into a hug. It was the first time anyone had touched me with kindness in longer than I could remember. The dam broke, and I sobbed in her shoulder, my body shaking with the weight of everything I'd been holding in: years of neglect, of being unseen, of believing I was unworthy of love. That night, Cindy set a steaming mug of hot chocolate in front of me, its warmth seeping into my cold hands. The kitchen was small but cozy, with mismatched mugs on the counter and a faint smell of cinnamon lingering in the air. It felt like a different world from the sterile silence of my parents' house. "Tell me what happened," she said softly, her eyes searching mine. I hesitated, afraid that speaking the truth would make it more real. But Cindy's gentle presence coaxed the words out of me. I told her everything: about the birthday they forgot, about being kicked out for Jake's family, about the trash bags in the drive where I was nothing but cargo. I told her how my parents hadn't said goodbye, how they'd driven away without looking back. My voice cracked, but I kept going, unloading the pain I'd carried for years. The comparisons to Jake, the way I'd been taught to apologize for existing, the loneliness that had become my shadow. Cindy listened, her face growing darker with every word. When I finished, she stood abruptly and grabbed her phone, disappearing into her bedroom. The door clicked shut, but I could hear her voice through the thin walls, sharp and furious in a way I'd never heard before. She was yelling at my parents, demanding answers, her words punctuated by disbelief. I sat there, stunned, clutching the mug as the chocolate grew cold. No one had ever fought for me like that. 10 minutes later, Cindy returned, her jaw tight. "They told me you wanted to come here," she said, her voice trembling with anger. "That you asked to leave, to be independent." I shook my head, tears welling up again. "That's not true." She sighed and sat beside me, resting a hand on my shoulder. "I know, kid, and you don't have to go back there if you don't want to. Not ever." That night, I lay on the pull-out couch in Cindy's living room, staring at the ceiling as moonlight filtered through the blinds. My mind was a storm of emotions: grief, anger, relief, fear. I felt like I was floating, untethered, with no idea where I'd land. But beneath it all was a tiny flicker of something new, the realization that someone cared enough to keep me. I couldn't sleep. The weight of the day pressed against my chest, demanding release. So I grabbed my phone and started typing. I didn't plan it. The words just spilled out, raw and unfiltered. I was kicked out of my house on my birthday, because my brother is having a baby, because my parents see me as disposable, something they can keep or throw away without a second thought, because I'm tired of pretending I'm okay after 17 years of being invisible. I poured my heart into those lines. Every hurt and humiliation, every moment I'd swallowed my pain to keep the peace. When I was done, I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the post button. What was the point? Who would care? But something inside me, maybe defiance, maybe desperation, pushed me to share it. I didn't add hashtags or tag anyone. I just needed the world to know I existed, even if I'd been erased from my own home. I hit post and turned off my phone, too afraid to face whatever came next. The next morning, I woke to a buzzing phone and a racing heart. I opened the app, and my breath caught. My post had exploded overnight. Thousands of likes, hundreds of comments. Strangers from across the world had seen my words and responded with their own stories. They wrote about being the forgotten child, the one left behind, the one who had to fight to be seen. Their messages wrapped around me like a blanket, each one a reminder that I wasn't alone. For the first time, I felt visible, like my pain mattered. But then I saw the messages from my parents. "Delete it now," my mother wrote. "You're destroying our family's reputation." And from my father, words that cut deeper than anything else: "I wish you'd never been born." I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. I'd expected anger, but this was a wound I didn't know how to heal. I blocked them both, my fingers moving on autopilot. I couldn't let their venom pull me back into the darkness. Heads turned. My classmates, sensing something was wrong, closed ranks around me, their presence a silent shield. I squared my shoulders and faced my parents, refusing to cower. "What do you want?" "We're taking you home," my father said, his voice sharp. "Now, home." I laughed, the sound bitter. "What home? I don't have one with you anymore." My mother stepped forward, her face tight with frustration. You can't stay with Cindy forever, Eli. You need to come back. Why? I shot back. Because you care about me? Or because you're afraid of what Grandma and Grandpa will do to your inheritance? Their silence was deafening. In that moment, I saw them for who they were. Not parents, but people who'd weighed my worth and found me lacking. I turned away, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. I'm not your bargaining chip. I'm a person, and you've never treated me like one. I walked away, their calls fading behind me. My classmates stayed close, their quiet support a lifeline. When I got to Cindy's, I told her everything, my words tumbling out in a rush. She listened, then opened her laptop with a determined look. It's time, she said. We're filing for guardianship. The word guardianship felt monumental, a severing of ties I'd never imagined. Part of me still hesitated, clinging to the faint hope that my parents might change. But I knew the truth. Staying with them meant more years of erasure, more days of begging for love they'd never give. I nodded. Okay. Cindy contacted a lawyer, and the process began. My grandparents backed us fully, offering to testify if needed. In a tense group call with the lawyer, they made their stance clear. If my parents fought this, they'd use every resource to ensure I stayed with Cindy. Eli's been through enough, my grandmother said, her voice unwavering. It's time he gets to live. Then came a message from my sister, Samantha. Can we meet? She wrote. I need to talk. Samantha was a ghost in my life. Never cruel, but never my defender. She'd stood on the sidelines, benefiting from our parents' favoritism without questioning it. I wasn't sure I wanted to see her, but a small part of me wondered if she'd finally seen me. I agreed to meet, but only after confirming she wasn't with our parents. Her apartment was small and cluttered, but it felt alive in a way our old house never had. Samantha looked tired, her eyes shadowed as she gestured for me to sit. I'm sorry, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I waited, unsure what to expect. I knew they treated you badly, she continued, but I was too scared to say anything. I thought staying quiet would keep things peaceful. I was wrong. Her words hung between us, heavy with regret. I didn't know if I could forgive her, but I listened as she explained how she'd been blindsided by my post, how she confronted our parents only to learn they'd lied about her role in my eviction. I never asked for your room, she said, tears spilling over. I told them I was only staying a few weeks. They made it sound like you wanted to leave. I nodded, the pieces falling into place. They didn't even talk about me after I left, did they? No, she admitted. It was like you were never there. The truth hurt, but it wasn't new. What was new was Samantha's promise. I'm done being silent. I'm on your side now, Eli. Whatever happens. A week later, the lawyer called with news. My parents had signed the papers, relinquishing guardianship to Cindy. No fight, no apologies, just a cold agreement, as if I were a contract they were done with. I'd expected relief, but instead, I felt hollow, like a part of me was still waiting for them to care. Cindy hugged me tightly. You haven't lost a family, she said. You're building a real one. Her words sank in as I looked around her kitchen, the radio humming, the smell of fresh cookies, the warmth that felt like home. For the first time, I believed her. Then came the letter from my father. It was thicker than I'd expected, and I almost threw it away unopened. But curiosity got the better of me. I sat on Cindy's couch, tearing open the envelope with shaking hands. The letter wasn't an apology or a rant. It was a justification, page after page of excuses. He wrote about keeping the family together, about how I was too sensitive, about how my post had blown things out of proportion. The final line read, I hope one day you'll see that family isn't always perfect, but it's still family. I folded the letter and tucked it away, not angry but weary. His words were empty, a last attempt to shift the blame. I didn't need his version of family anymore. Fall arrived, painting Cincinnati in shades of crimson and gold. I started a new high school, navigating crowded hallways and curious stares. Anxiety still gripped me sometimes, but I wasn't alone anymore. Cindy's house was my haven, a blue-painted bedroom, a second-hand desk, a lamp she'd found at a garage sale. Every night, she'd knock before entering, offering tea in a quiet. How was your day? I didn't have to fight to be heard. I didn't have to prove I deserved to exist. I started journaling again, sketching in the margins, letting my thoughts spill onto the page. The past still lingered. Memories of cold birthdays, of Jake's shadow, of doors closing behind me, but I didn't let it define me. I was learning to build something new. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe one day I'll face my parents again, at a funeral or a holiday, and I'll have to decide whether to forgive. Maybe I will, or maybe I won't. But one thing is certain, I'm no longer the forgotten child. I'm Eli Carter, 17 years old. I live with my incredible aunt in Cincinnati. I have a sister who's trying to be better, grandparents who showed up when it mattered, and a life I'm choosing for myself. I'm learning to love who I am, to stand tall, to walk away from what hurts me. Not everyone is born with a home, but everyone can build one. I'm doing that now, brick by brick, and I'm not alone.